So I just got my tires rotated, and it's something that I've been needing to do for a long time. I've been putting it off because I just haven't had time. You know, like most of you out there, I'm working 2 jobs, plus then I've got multiple other irons in the fire, kids, family. And so it just seems like there's never enough time. And I'm at that time of the year where I'm burning through vacation days and the use it or lose it. It's part of your employment package, you know, your benefits package, and yet you kind of get penalized if you use it. We won't go down that rabbit trail. But as I'm sitting in the lobby waiting to get my tires rotated, I'm doing my Bible study, and I'd looked up some verses on setting priorities and really kind of putting in place what's important. And I got more than I bargained for. So my Bible study today took me to the book of Luke. I just done a quick Google search on, you know, some verses about priorities. And every time I pull up, well, most every time that I pull up a Bible verse, I always go through and read the entire chapter so that I don't take that individual verse out of context. I like to apply the context of the entire chapter to make sure I'm fully grasping what it's trying to say. It says in verse 16, "And he told them this certain parable. The ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. He thought to himself, 'What shall I do? I have no place to store my crops.' Then he said, 'This is what I'll do. I will tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store my surplus grain. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry.' But God said to him, 'You fool, this very night your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich towards God.'" You know, those verses hit me pretty hard. I've read the Gospels many, many times throughout the course of my life, and yet it's like I'm reading it for the first time. We work our entire lives scrimping and saving, sacrificing for this retirement, this pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, when in the end, we're all going to give up the ghost. None of us are getting out of this thing alive. I mean, God chastised this guy. He says, you know, you're saving all this stuff so you can have an easy life. But he said, this very night, your life will be demanded of you. And he said, then who's going to take all your crap? I'm paraphrasing. At the end of the day, what's important in life? Is it chasing this never-ending gluttony of trying to have more stuff? You know, or are we skimping out on the things that are important? And I think most of the time, the reason that we do this is FOMO, that fear of missing out. We're always worried that somebody is going to have a better car, a better house, an easier life. Jesus actually addresses this directly later on in chapter 12 when he says, "Who of you, by worrying, can add a single hour to your life? Since you cannot do this very little thing, why do you worry about the rest?" And yet we worry, and we worry, and we worry. And the only way that we can satiate that worry is by fattening up our bank accounts and becoming rich. In verse 21, it says, "This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but is not rich toward God." So what does it mean to be rich? You know, I think everybody has different definitions of that. As long as I drive a vehicle that's fully loaded, or my house is in the zip code that is next to the country club. And I'm not saying those things are bad. The Bible doesn't even say money is bad. It says it's the love of money that is bad. The Bible also says, though, I tell you the truth, and I'm paraphrasing, but it says, I tell you the truth, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to get into heaven. What does that mean? It means that you get attached to the world, attached to the stuff, the things, and you become rich in the world and not with God. It says later on in verse 32, "Do not be afraid, little flock, for your Father has been pleased to give you the kingdom. Sell your possessions and give to the poor. Provide purses for yourselves that will not wear out, a treasure in heaven that will never fail, where no thief comes near and no moth destroys. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also." So it's a matter of the heart. What is your heart attached to? Are you on this hamster wheel just trying to go through and procure more stuff where the thief and the moth will steal and destroy? Where are your priorities at? We only have so much time, and not one of us is promised tomorrow. You could give up the ghost today, and then who's going to fight over your stuff? It's all stuff at the end of the day. And I'm not going to be the harbinger of bad news. I think if you've got a set of eyes or if you've been paying attention, I think many of us can understand that we're coming close to something, some big change, whether it's a second coming, whether it's a big reset, I don't know. But the Bible's very clear on signs of things to come. It says in verse 51, "Do you think I came to bring peace on earth? No, I tell you, but division. From now on, there will be 5 in one family divided against each other, 3 against 2, and 2 against 3. They will be divided, father against son, and son against father, mother against daughter, and daughter against mother, mother-in-law against daughter-in-law, and daughter-in-law against mother-in-law." Does that sound familiar? You know, we just got through Thanksgiving, and I saw tons of memes about people saying, I'm going to say this thing at the Thanksgiving table, or I'm not going to say this thing at the Thanksgiving table. At the end of the day, it's all about this division. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Why would it be this way? Because there does need to be a separation of people that are consumed and attached to this world and other people that see beyond it. The signs are all around you. He said to the crowd, "When you see a cloud rising in the west, immediately you say, 'It is going to rain,' and it does. And when you see the south winds blow, you say, 'It's going to be hot,' and it is. Hypocrites, you know how to interpret the appearance of the earth and the sky. How is it that you don't know how to interpret the present time?" And then it says in verse 57, and I think most of us miss this, myself included, "Why don't you judge for yourselves what is right?" Jesus said for himself, he says, why don't you judge for yourselves what is right? He just got finished saying, you know all of the signs. You know that I'm coming to divide. So we see that all over the place. And yet, if you raise your hand in church and say, hey, listen, I've got some questions, you get it slapped. If you raise your hand in your workplace or in your family, you get it slapped. And it says it's going to be that way. So the question then becomes, where do you fit into this? Where are your priorities? Where does your allegiance lie? Are you just focused on procuring stuff where the thief and the moth steals and destroys? Or are you focusing on something bigger? At the end of the day, I don't have all the answers. I do know that my priorities are out of whack. I need tires. If I don't rotate them and I wear them out prematurely, I'm going to have to come up with $700 or $800 to fix it. But I have been going through and filling my life and my time with meaningless endeavors throughout the day in order to appear busy. Tim Ferriss in his book, The 4-Hour Workweek, says, he's like, do you really need to do all that stuff? He says, what would happen if you just didn't do them? And I realize my priorities are completely and totally out of whack. I've been focusing my entire life in the wrong direction. I've been trying to anchor myself to this world. And yeah, you know, I'm a living, breathing thing just like you are, and I've got to live and eat and survive in this world just like you do. But my priorities have been completely and totally out of whack. It says here in verse 38, it will be good for those servants whose master finds them ready, even if he comes in the middle of the night or towards daybreak. But understand this, if the owner of the house had known at what hour the thief was coming, he would not have let his house be broken into. You also must be ready, because the Son of Man will come at an hour when you do not expect him. It says in verse 43, it will be good for that servant whom the master finds doing so when he returns. Truly, I tell you, he will put him in charge of all of his possessions. So how are you living your life? You know, I've spent the majority of my life helping people plan for retirement down the road that many of them don't even make it to. Look at life insurance policies. There's an entire industry predicated in this notion that, hey, you're going to give up the ghost and somebody else is going to get paid. But just like what the Bible says, it says, what are people going to do with all your stuff? We see over here in the book of Matthew, verses 6, it says in verse 19, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where the moths and the vermin destroy and where the thieves break in and steal. But store up your treasures in heaven where the moths and the vermin do not destroy and where the thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So how do you store up those treasures in something that you can't see, feel, or touch? That's a tough one. I'm not saying I have all the answers. But just like it says over in Luke 12, verse 21, this is how it will be when whoever stores up things for themselves but is not rich towards God. How do you get rich towards God? And again, I don't have all the answers, but you have to spend time with him. And it's like, what does that mean? Well, Jones, I pray all the time. Do you turn everything off? Do you get into that quiet spot with him? I mean, I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm speaking loudly to myself more than anybody, because I have to remember, and I forget all the time, to just shut everything down and to be still and to know that he is God. Are you rich towards God, or are you just rich in a world where the thief steals and the moth destroys? Where are your priorities at? And just like Jesus says in chapter 12, the signs will be there and you'll know them. It's important for you to find those signs and see those signs for yourself. Don't just listen to me. Don't just listen to your pastor. Get in here and find it yourself. Just like he says in verse 57, why don't you judge for yourselves what is right? So where are your priorities at today? You know, I've been needing to get my tires rotated for almost a year, but I've been allowing Excel spreadsheets and TPS reports to take center stage in my life. And now at the end of the year, I'm having to burn up vacation days that I'm going to lose because I haven't prioritized living my life. I don't know how this story is going to end, but Jesus does say the signs are all around us. And more than that, he says, go find those signs for yourself. So I encourage you to do that today. You know, it says be rich in God. So spend some time with him today. If you found this to be encouraging, please give it a like or a share, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Be blessed.